Hey folks, it's Abby and today we're going to be balancing the books for February. And I don't have high hopes. So oddly, I read 14 books in February. Don't get me wrong, I read a lot of books, but it still wasn't enough. And I didn't buy 14 books. So let's just take a look at this and see how that happened. So first of all, two of the books that I read I hauled in technically in February. So I filmed my January balancing the books just before my Luma Crate box arrived. And in that box we got 2 books. Now I've read them, but I've hauled 2 and then I've read the 2. So that's 2 of the 14 books now that don't count towards taking off of the ones that I bought. So there you go, there's 2, I'll mention them in a moment as we get through them. But then I also had a bad few weeks and treated myself to some book series that I wanted. So I'm gonna go through what I read in the order that I read it, and we'll see how it comes out at the end. How is this already going wrong on the second month? So the first book that I read was for the Missy Elliott readathon. I will link my TBR video here and Cachet's announcement video down in the comments so you can see like how all the prompts line up and stuff. I'm gonna be honest, I'm doing this on my lunch break, I don't have time. Sorry, Shay, I love you. But, so I read Binti. This was a really short book. I listened to it by audiobook and I listened to it all in work, just very quickly. I actually really like this. And the audio file was corrupt for me, so my audio files played in the wrong order and I had to like play around with it to get them to actually play chronologically, and yet I still enjoyed it, despite the fact that I had to listen to it twice. So yeah, the fact that I still enjoyed it from the first pass, even though it was in the wrong order, tells you a decent amount. It is a sci-fi novella about a young woman who is leaving her home. She's from a minority culture, like very out of the way, very rural, and is on a ship with a load of other humans from cities who don't understand her culture, and then they are attacked and she is the only survivor. Goes from there. Really good. Really want to read more from this author. And then in the same day, also on audiobook, I listened to The Princess Bride. This was so much fun. I recently watched the film at the very end of last year, finally. This is basically the same. This is one of the best adaptations I've seen because it's almost word for word. It's fantastic, and listening to it on audio is great. The narrator does a great job at bringing the characters to life, and of course because I've seen the film I could see all the characters in my head as they were in the film. Really good book regardless of whether you want to watch the film or not. So much fun. Basically 2 young people fall in love and then one of them goes away and she believes him to be dead, but he's not dead, he's actually now highwayman. Well, he's pirate, but shut up. And then they like see if they can find their love, and the king doesn't want because the king wants to marry the girl because she's so pretty, and just read it. I promise it's not as bad as I'm making it sound. Then on the 2nd of February I listened to Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. For some reason I had forgotten that this was a memoir when I went into it, so that was a bit of a surprise. It was a really interesting read, and I do think I suffered a little bit because it was in audiobook format. I think I could have gotten a little bit more out of this if I read it physically myself. Sometimes I prefer audio, sometimes I prefer physical. This one I think is a physical preference. Still a really good book. And then one that doesn't have a cover, and that is because I beta read a book that our wonderful Pablo Suarez on BookTube is writing. The current title for it is The Broken Oath, but of course that could change. And this is a fantastic fantasy novella. It's beautiful, it's amazing. I am genuinely so invested in the world. Pablo was like, should I expand on this character and maybe like write another novella? Yes, yes, don't leave me there. It's so good, it's so good. So whether he chooses to self-publish or go down the traditional publishing route, I am here waiting for everything. Genuine, honest to God, genuinely. I loved it, I loved it. I clearly, with The Broken Oath and our wonderful Queendom of the Seven Lakes, I need to read more self-published fantasy because, so good. Then I finally read a physical book, The Ivory Key by Akshaya Raman. This is an Indian-inspired YA fantasy book that follows 4 siblings, the Queen and her other siblings, as they have to come together despite the fact that they've all been estranged and really not getting along to find the Ivory Key and save their kingdom. This is so well done. It's beautiful. This was the secondary Illumicrate book that came in the January box. It is fantastic. I adored all of the integration of the Indian culture, and I really loved the character development and the plot line. It was just done so well. I never would have thought to pick up this book myself. And I will be continuing on with the series, so that's how I feel about this one. So good. Then next up, from our very own Ladette M, otherwise known as Hannah O'Donnell, I read Fatlip. So this is a slightly fictionalised, I believe, just because she's changed names, so is that fictionalised? But like non-fiction stories from Hannah's life, both in her childhood and teenage years, both when she's a teacher, in her time at parties, her relationship with her parents. This was just such a good read. I zipped through it. Like, I know it's short, I'm aware of that, it's like 130 pages, but I didn't put it down once I picked it up. It was just so engrossing, so very British, such a fantastic look at growing up, and so many amazing stories, and it really gave me a lot more of an insight into Hannah as a person, which, as her friend, is lovely to have. So yeah, I know that I'm massively biased because I'm friends with Hannah, but genuinely I do think that this is a really well written book, and I do recommend giving it a shot. Next up is another physical book, but I don't know if it counts. If it does count for the balancing, then it also doesn't count, because in January my mother-in-law lent me, hence the unhaul, but then I read it, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. So in terms of balancing the books, I'm just going to pretend that this doesn't exist because I never hauled it to own it, and I'm assuming it will be going back to her. If it's not, if she says that I can keep it, then in the month that she states that I can keep it, because she doesn't reread books, then I will add it to my balancing in that month. But for now, I'm awaiting to give this back to her. Anyway, the book, fucking fantastic. I'm so mad that it's taken me this long to read. This is why she loved it, so she wanted me to read it. It's so good. Don't fall down, I'm in the middle of a rant. So, this is a mind-twisting little book where you're following this person around who doesn't seem to understand the strangeness of their situation whilst the other person does, and you get more and more hints about there's something being not quite right, and the ending is nothing that I expected, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It of course has ancient Greek themes throughout it, but it also has intricacies of the modern day. I don't know how to describe it without ruining it. Please, it's really fucking weird and I really recommend it. It's so good. And like, this paperback version is like 250 pages. I promise it is short. Please pick it up, it's so good. It's so good. If my mother-in-law would like this back, I'm going to be buying my own version anyway at some point. Because I love it. So, there you go. Don't fall over. Don't fall. Please? Thank you. Then, a book that I've been trying to read for a long time. Double Cross by Mallory Blackman. This is the fourth book in the Noughts and Crosses series, the last one in the kind of original quadrilogy. What the hell do we call 4 books? It's not a trilogy, fuck knows. This was really, really tough for me to read. I had started it in 2021, I got 90 pages in, couldn't hack reading any more of it. It's a really tough book to read. Of course I don't want to spoil this book for you. It's a multi-generational series, and in the first book we follow a young black girl and a young white boy. In this world the racial roles are reversed and the white people are the minority and the black people are the majority, and we follow an interracial relationship and all of the intricacies that come with that. Blackman doesn't shy away from the really tough topics in any of these books. You've probably seen my reaction to previous ones, The Knife Edge and Checkmate made me weep. This one didn't, but that's because I was reading through it a lot faster to just try and get myself to read through it, because I wasn't going to pick this up otherwise. It made for like 4 of the prompts for the Missy Elliott readathon, so like I really wanted to read it, but it's just one that I've really been struggling with. I do think it's not quite as good as the other 3 for me personally, but it's still amazing. Like, when I say not quite as good, like, I'm still not giving this anything less than 5 stars. But yeah, it's just a very heavy one, so check the trigger warnings on that series, please. Then another audiobook, I have My Sister the Serial Killer. I almost DNF'd this. It has a decent Nigerian accent throughout on the audiobook, and so I didn't want to speed it up just to make sure that I wasn't missing any. But I ended up just really, really bored. I read really fast, and the slow pace of the book was massively screwing with me, obviously imposed by the fact that it was read by someone. So I just said to myself, like, you're gonna DNF this, you just need to play it faster. If you play it faster and you still DNF it, then it's fine, you've given it a shot, like, just move on. But no, it worked out brilliantly. It's a great book. It's a great book. I'm so glad that I sped it up. The accent was fine. This book focused a lot more on familial relationships than I expected. I thought it was going to be a lot more about, you know, the murders. It wasn't. It was a lot of familial interactions, a lot of relationship interactions from friends and colleagues, and it was a really interesting book, and I highly recommend it to anyone who can deal with the fact that the content of the book is that this sister keeps murdering blokes. It's a really interesting book and I'm so glad I read it. Then next up I read Seasons of War by Derek Landy. This is the 13th, I don't know, book in the Skullduggery Pleasant series. I've lost count. This was my first time rereading this one. All of the others I think I've reread at least once before. This was my first reread of this one, and I read it alongside Becca from the Comic Book Sanctum. This was so much fun to delve back into again for my first reread. The world is amazing. It was just so much fun, so many little reveals, so many things set up, and little kind of setups that I can see now reading back, having read the entire series. So good. In terms of the series, I mentioned this all the fucking time, so very quickly. It starts off, it's set in Ireland, it starts off with a 12-year-old girl, her uncle dies, she is therefore introduced to magic by process of someone turning up to the will, and she's taken under the wing of a skeleton detective. And it goes from middle grade to like upper YA, just in terms of violence. Fantastic series. I'm so excited to read Dead or Alive next month. Then, I had such a good reading month. Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. So this I buddy read with Hannah from La M, the aforementioned Hannah, who also gifted me this book for Christmas, so thank you very much. And this is fantastic. So we follow a American Malaysian girl who is the child of first-generation immigrants. I believe she was born in Malaysia and then moved to the US. They have to move back to Malaysia because of some health issues with her dad and some financial issues. And before they move back, inside her head, she hears a voice that is claiming it's her grand's voice. She thinks she's just overly stressed, like she's trying to find a job. She's about 20-ish years old. She's finished American college, so 20-ish, because I think you finish British university at like 21 and they finish college slightly earlier, I'm guessing. And so she's trying to find a job, she's moving to a completely different continent, and she also happens to be a lesbian who has not told her parents that she's a lesbian, and her girlfriend is starting to get annoyed that she won't tell them. So that's a whole backstory. But then yes, the grandmother is in her head, and I loved the integration of the Malaysian culture in here with the different gods and their methods of worship combined in with the day-to-day life in Malaysia and the kind of integration of Christianity. So interesting, so many fascinating topics. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah, for gifting me this, and thank you Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, because she knows my taste perfectly, and she said that I would enjoy this, and she was very much right. This is one of the best books that I've read so far this year. So good, so good. Then, gifted to me by Veronica, I read This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal Almota and Max Gladstone. This is such a good little book. Oh my god, I'm so tempted to buy myself the fancy Illumicrate edition, because I loved it. I loved it. So this is a romance sci-fi novella, but the romance is very, very, very light. Very light. It is basically these two agents from opposing sides in this time war end up messaging each other, and they start off as kind of like a catty, like, oh, you seem quite good, but I'm gonna like bitch about you a little bit in this letter to like, I love you. And it's just so interesting to see the plot play out in that way, and the relationships to progress without them ever actually meeting face to face. The letter writing is beautiful, the information weaved into the letters is beautiful. I read this over quite a few days because I was just wanting to savour it. This book is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. Thank you, Veronica. I loved it so much. I highly, highly recommend picking this up if you like sci-fi. I promise, I don't do romance. So I'm demisexual, okay. And that also then like links into my books, because I need to have a connection with the characters to care at all about their romance whatsoever. And you really get that here. So if you are asexual and don't like, if that also goes into your books and you don't like reading, or aromantic, and you don't like reading about any of that sort of stuff in your books, then no, you still won't like this one. But if you like a little, like you're fine with a little bit of romance, if it's like a subplot normally, this will still be fine for you, because the intricacies of the world is so amazing, and then the depth that you get into with these two characters is fantastic, that I'm just interested in their just general relationship, not romantic, but just how they interact. I'm ranting. It's good. And then, oh, okay, bring the tone down. This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. This was the other Illumicrate book for January, so got a book, read a book. Yeah, this is... I gave it 2 stars. The only thing that saved it for me was the Discord. Honest to God, the Discord for when we were reading this saved so much of the book, because this is my first ever book that I've read by Tahereh Mafi, and if this is indicative of her writing in her other books, her writing is shit, in my opinion, obviously. It is very poorly written. Tahereh Mafi claimed that this was a Game of Thrones reimagining. It is not. It's Cinderella. It's Cinderella. So many of the plot points are ridiculous. The character development is almost non-existent to the point of annoyance. The last chapter has an incident that is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Where the fuck did that come from? And yet, despite all of these negatives, it was still interesting enough, and it was fun to kind of bitch about it on the Discord, that I was still reading. And I actually ended up on some days reading more chapters than was allotted, because I wanted to know what was going on. But then it was still just, it was so bad that it was entertaining. That is how bad this was. It is so badly written that it was entertaining to see what stupid shit Mafi was going to put into the book next. I still don't know if I'm going to read the sequel to this. I think it's intended to be a trilogy, and I still have no clue if I'm going to read the sequel at all. Because clearly, like, I read through it, and I kept reading it, and like reading more pages than I needed to, but it was shit. So I don't know. I don't know. If you also read this, please don't be offended if you loved it. I'm very sorry. I just did not. I will not be reading anything else by Tahereh Mafi unless it is just if I choose to continue on with this series. I do not think she's an author for me. It was just very childish writing, very childish. A lot of childish plot points that were just there for convenience. So yeah. This was fine. It wasn't. It was crap. And then I am filming this on my lunch break at work on the 28th. So, have I read this? I don't know. I am currently 26 pages into the Bridesmaid Survival Guide by Hannah O'Donnell, the aforementioned Ladder-Tem. I keep saying aforementioned, let's just run with that. This is, obviously I haven't read it yet, so I can't tell you too much, but it is a contemporary fiction about a woman who is asked to be her aunt's Hannah, what have you done to me? Her aunt's bridesmaid. And obviously this kind of tells you about it, but it's like her day-to-day life of getting ready for this wedding, things that she's not prepared for, and then also just her day-to-day life kind of on the so far coming up to the wedding. I'm assuming there'll be some stuff at the wedding too. So far it's really interesting. Like I said with Fatlip, the writing's really engaging. So yeah, I really do want to sit down and read this. Like, I'm sorry I didn't finish it if I didn't, Hannah. Or I'm sorry that I haven't been able to properly exalt its virtues because I haven't finished it as of filming. But I'm really enjoying it so far, even though I'm only 26 pages in. So I'm very excited for this. I really do hope that I read it. The balancing scales will tell you whether I did or not. And then just before I go into the whole balancing shenanigans, I will also mention that I read the requisite pages for Count of Monte Cristo. We started on page 231 and we finished on page 486. So about 250 pages read of this, reading a chapter a day with Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe. We are really enjoying this, very fun. And then I have actually been reading some of Fall of Giants finally, just to try and get through it again. So started on page 615 and I want to read some more chapters today. So I'm hoping that I'm going to end up at like around 761. But if I don't read anything today, if I spend the entire time reading Bridesmaid Survival or something, then I'm on page 718 right now. So yeah, I'm hoping to basically read 40 pages, which shouldn't take too long. But yeah, this is a historical fiction. I didn't say what this is about. Man is wrongfully imprisoned, gets revenge. Historical fiction all around World War I. Look at me summarising. I'm getting my hair caught. Ow. So those are the books that I read. As you can see, part of the issue was a lot of ebooks. However, let's now get into the books that I hauled and start fucking up this little graph that we've made. I said there was a lot. So I've already read this one, but just because I'm mentioning books that I'm hauling in. So I finally bought Deliverance of the Blessed by A.B. Endicott. I've read this already. Alice gave me an e-arc to read. I adore this series. It is one of the ones in the Legends of the God-Kissed Continent with the Queen of the Seven Lakes. It's a fantastic YA fantasy series, one of my favourites on the planet, and so even though I have been given every single one of these books to read for free on ebook by Alice, I still want to own them on my shelves because I really love them. They're so good. Honestly, they're fantastic. These books are amazing. So yes, I treated myself to this. So I read it, and it can go right there. Okay, now the books that I haven't read. So I got The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is where the memory police can remove the existence of something from everyone's memories. So they can tell you that you don't remember that birds exist, and the entire population won't know about birds. And just that kind of the concept of the fact that this can be manipulated and used sounds absolutely fascinating, so I'm so excited to read this. And then the other one that isn't in a series, or isn't this series that I bought the entire series of, is This Vicious Cure by Emily Savada. This is the third book in the This Mortal Coil series. I read This Mortal Coil by ebook, and then This Cruel Design by an arc, which is here. But at least I kind of have matching now. And yes, I've been wanting to finish off this series for so long. It is fantastic. The first book is, maybe this is timed wrong to be promoting it, but it's all about a plague that can't be stopped and it explodes people. And this is in a world where you can manipulate your DNA yourself. If you have the skills and the know-how, and everyone is isolating to stay away from each other to try not to get this plague so that they don't explode. I'm explaining it very badly because it's been years. I think I read This Cruel Design in 2019, so it's been years since I've read it, but I highly recommend. This is a fantastic YA sci-fi dystopian, really good, I promise. Please check this one out. I loved it. The first book in this series, This Mortal Coil, is the first book since I started reading again from my break from school, language school, that kept me up at night. Because I just could not put the book down. I was just glued to my Kindle screen. So yeah, highly recommend this series. Okay, and then I have two series that I bought in full. I've actually read Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. As you guys probably know, I unhauled it because I had a second-hand copy. I didn't really like it. It was the other English cover with like the door. It works with the book, but I really like these covers. They're really pretty. So I wanted to get the entire series in this. So of course, this doesn't need to count for balancing the books because I read it like last year. But then I did also buy Dreams of Gods and Monsters and Days of Blood and Starlight. This is a series of a girl who, she's in Prague and she's halfway between our world, like reality, and also the magical world, where there's a war going on between two factions. And then, this is my downfall here, I entirely blame Carrie from Caring for Books and Veronica from Veronica's Shelf. I got the entire Graceling series. So that's Graceling, Fire, Bitter Blue and Winter Keep, all by Kristin Kershaw. Now, I got these purely because Carrie absolutely adores them, and we tend to have the same viewpoints on almost every single YA fantasy that we read. So this should be a shoo-in. And I really do want to give them a shot, and the covers are beautiful as well. However, it does then mean that I've added 4 books to my TBR in one go. And this is where the problem comes in. So I started off February with 118 books on my TBR, and then I added in 11. So 2 of those books were the Illumicrate books, and then the other 9 were these new ones that I've grabbed here, obviously not including Daughter of Smoke and Bone and Deliverance of the Blessed. That is, considering that I've only read the 2 Illumicrate ones, 9 books. 18 plus 9 is maths. Fuck. 9 times 3. 27. I got an A in my GCSE maths. I'm still convinced they marked that wrong. I have 127 books then on my TBR before I read anything this month. Then, in terms of physical books that I've read, that I can confirm as of filming, I read 4. This is not enough to get it back down. If I do finish the Bridesmaid Survival Guide, if I manage that, then I will have 122 books on my physical TBR. That's 4 books more than I should have. Yes, I just counted that on my fingers. Which is not good. Part of me is like thinking, do I try and finish off Fall of Giants tonight as well and just do nothing but sit and read? Just so that's like 2 off, so then I only have to get rid of 3 books. how have I fucked this up? We are in the second month of the year. I will have to get rid of 3, 4, 5, however many, depending at the end. It will be on the screen. Books. And I will have to unhaul those. I may use Emma's thing of like, if I don't manage to read it by the end of the month, then it has to go. I might try that. I haven't looked at the bookshelves yet, but if that is the case, then I'll do that. I'm going to have a look now, like in this video, I'm going to see if I can try and find 3, 4, 5 books to unhaul. My room is currently a fucking tip because I took all the decorations off the shelves because I want to reorganise my shelves and actually properly decide everything. So there are just boxes with the decorations in, which are in front of the TBR. So I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm going to have a little bit of a hunt, eat my lunch and figure out some books that I would be willing to part with. Fucking hell. We'll see. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I've got 5 books here that will be going depending on how much I read. I am going to put them in order of get ridness. So, I don't want to go through them. So, first up are the 2 easy ones, and this is The Bazaar of Bad Dreams by Stephen King. I read 95 pages of this in 2021 and I just really wasn't feeling it. I wasn't enjoying the short stories. They were interesting concepts but poorly executed. I kept it because I wanted to try again, but if I have to unhaul, shut up, if I have to unhaul, this will be one of them. Then on a similar vein, we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with The Merry Men of the Stories by R.L. Stevenson. This I read 148 pages of in 2021 and the book is only 220 pages long. So I wanted to, shut up, I wanted to keep it and finish it, just there's finish the short story I'm in the middle of and then read the last short story. But R.L. Stevenson's writing is just so bad. So I really don't want to. I would prefer to read it and to finish it at some point in life, but if I have to get rid of it then that can go. So it's just after midnight, and just a quick update on the whole will she won't she with the finishing the books. I finished Fall of Giants by Ken Follett and I also finished The Bridesmaid Survival Guide by Hannah O'Donnell. With Fall of Giants, my thoughts are pretty much the same as they were. The ending was really enjoyable and I'm really looking forward to seeing the characters and their descendants kind of picking up again in the second book, with it being in World War II and a lot of the kind of like, oh thank god it's over and we're all fine forevermore, was hilariously ironic. Still feel the same way about the very heavy male gaze, but I'm very glad that I've read this. And then The Bridesmaid Survival Guide. I can actually speak about this now. This is so good. You can see I'm like 20 odd pages in. I read the rest of this all in one sitting. It was absolutely fantastic. It was predictable in the best possible way. Like I knew how the ending was going to turn out and I was 100% here for the ride. I adored the comments on the fat phobia and the internalised and external misogynism. There were so many interesting discussions about this entire thing. The love interest is perfection. His best mate, fantastic. Sneaky champagne, love it. This is such a good book. Like genuinely, I know I'm massively biased, but it is such a good contemporary. I am so glad I read it. So thank you so much, Hannah. This is amazing, genuinely. I highly recommend checking this out if you enjoy contemporary, if you like books with romance, or even if you don't, maybe just as the odd one here or there. This was so much fun and I'm 100% going to be recommending it to everyone I can. This is genuinely such a well written book. So good. So then in terms of trying to update on what that means for balancing, as I said, it's after midnight. However, what was it? I think that it was, I had to get rid of 5 books and then I've read 1, so that would be 4 books, and then I've read 1, so that would be 3 books. Yes, so fucking hell, I'm tired. Oh god, there's gonna be a big flash of text explaining everything. Okay, back to actually awake Abby while I go and take off this makeup. What have I learnt? Well, read more! So yes, pray for editing Abby, because this takes a lot of editing, this one, especially with the fact that right now, as of filming, I don't have half the answers. So like, did I read the Bridesmaid survival guide? Fuck knows. Future Abby knows. I'm not future Abby. So yeah, sorry to future me for all the editing. If you enjoy the video and you would like to see me struggle more in the future as I cry over the fact that despite reading 14 books it's not enough, please do hit the subscribe button, and if you liked seeing my pain and suffering, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video, which will hopefully be less painful. Bye! Fuck's sake, man.